You have come here, perhaps with the subtle feeling that something in you aches without a name. I can see it in your eyes, a kind of hidden tension that the modern mind tries to explain away with technical phrases and prescriptions. But beneath those words, beneath the diagnostic charts and medical reports, lies a truth far more ancient than medicine itself. Your body is the visible shadow of your invisible psyche. Every pain, every tension, every strange sensation that arrives without logic is not an accident. It is the soul speaking in the only language left to it when the conscious mind refuses to listen. The symptom is the dream of the body, and like every dream, it is written in symbols. We have been taught to fear these messages. We dull them with pills, smother them with busyness, or wrap them in polite explanations. Yet, what you repress in the heart will seep into the flesh. This is why I tell you, your knee pain, your migraines, your tight shoulders, the knot in your stomach, are all hieroglyphs carved into the living temple of your being. They are signs from the unconscious, and the unconscious does not waste its energy on meaningless events. It is precise, it is deliberate. When you do not speak your grief, your neck stiffens. When you do not release your anger, your chest constricts. When you hold on to the illusion of control, your back begins to bow under an invisible weight. In my work, I have seen the same pattern appear across cultures, across decades, across the vast chasms of individual biography. The unexpressed will return, clothed in the garments of the body. You may call it stress, you may call it genetics, but I call it the return of the shadow. And the shadow, when unacknowledged, does not merely whisper, it compels, it shapes your fate while you believe you are choosing freely, until you make the unconscious conscious. It will direct your life and you will call it fate. I have spoken those words, and they remain as true for the aching spine as for the recurring nightmare. Consider the neck not merely a column of bone and sinew, but the bridge between mind and heart. When it stiffens, is it only muscle fibers protesting, or is it the symbol of your unwillingness to turn, to see, to bend in your convictions? A rigid neck often belongs to a rigid soul, one afraid to look at what lies behind or beside. The body, in its ancient wisdom, mirrors the intransigence of the psyche. Your shoulders, how many have I seen who carry the whole weight of their families, their work, their histories, as if they were condemned to be Atlas forever. These are the archetypes you live without knowing. The martyr who cannot put down the cross, the hero who refuses to rest, the parent who has forgotten they too are a child of the eternal. But here is where the mystical enters. Every muscle that tightens is also a guardian of a forgotten truth. Tension is not the enemy, it is the sentinel at the gate. When your chest aches, when you feel the invisible band tighten around your ribs, it may not be your lungs that are in trouble, but your capacity to breathe in the life you desire. This is the realm of the anima, the soul image, calling you to feel what you have refused to feel. A broken heart is not merely a metaphor, it is a psychic wound with somatic roots. The grief you have not dared to fully meet becomes a heaviness in the sternum, a reluctance to expand into the present. I have often asked patients to place a hand over their heart, not as a sentimental gesture, but as a ritual act of re-entering their own inner house. Close your eyes now, if you will, and feel the rhythm there. Each beat is both personal and universal yours, and yet the same as the pulse of the first human who ever loved and lost. If you ask in that quiet, "What am I still holding?" the answer will not arrive as a sentence, but as a sensation, a memory, an image from your inner landscape. This is how the unconscious speaks, not in the grammar of logic, but in the imagery of dreams. Your back, too, is not merely structural. It is the tree of your life, holding the rings of every year you have lived. The upper back is the site where you store the invisible debts you have taken on, not financial debts, but the expectations of others, the demands you agreed to out of love or guilt. The lower back hides a deeper layer, the fear of survival, the instinctual anxiety over shelter. Food, stability, these are not just personal. They are collective memories. In the architecture of the psyche, the lower back connects to the archetype of the provider, the one who must ensure the tribe's survival. And when life shakes the ground beneath you, that archetype tenses, as if by sheer muscular effort it could hold up the collapsing world. I remember a man who came to me with chronic lower back pain. He had tried every therapy, every exercise, every modern solution. But when I asked him to speak of his fears, he became silent. His father had lost everything in the financial collapse, and though the son had built a comfortable life, he carried the inherited terror that it could all vanish. The pain was not in his muscles, it was in the archetypal inheritance, the wound of instability. Only when he named it, only when he saw that he was living in his father's fate instead of his own, did the tension begin to dissolve. You see, the body is not just your own, it carries the ghosts of your ancestors. To heal, you must sometimes speak to the dead within you. Even your legs, those faithful pillars, are not exempt from this dialogue between body and soul. To move forward physically requires the same courage as to move forward spiritually. When you hesitate to take the next step in life, the legs grow heavy, the joints ache, the feet complain. This is not cruelty from the body, it is a mirror of your reluctance and your feet. They are the root system of your personal tree. When they hurt, when you cannot stand comfortably, it is often because you no longer feel at home in the place you stand. This may be literal, the wrong city, the wrong house, or it may be existential, the wrong life, the wrong story. The unconscious has no interest in your comfort. If that comfort is killing your soul, it will shake the foundations of your being, and if you do not listen to its whispers, it will use your body as its drum. Pain then becomes a kind of sacred percussion, calling you to dance differently. The healer within you is always present, but you must give it the raw material of truth. If you cannot speak the truth to another, at least speak it to yourself, even if only in the privacy of your journal or in the silence of your room at night. There is a story, and I tell it not for its factual truth, but for its symbolic resonance of a young man who sought out a village healer. His back ached so fiercely that he could barely stand. The healer did not touch him, did not give him medicine, but asked only one question: "Who are you carrying?" The young man was startled, for he had been carrying his mother's grief, his father's shame, his family's debts, none of them truly his. At the healer's request, he wrote each burden on a piece of paper, then burned it. The act did not magically cure him, but over time, as he learned to stop picking up those ashes, the pain faded. Rituals such as these are not superstition. They are conversations with the unconscious in its own symbolic tongue. So I ask you, as we begin this exploration together, which part of your body has been speaking to you in discomfort? And will you treat it as a mere malfunction to be silenced? Or will you meet it as a messenger from the depth? You cannot escape this dialogue. You can only choose whether to engage consciously or to let it continue in the shadows. And in the shadows, it will shape you without your consent. You must understand the body does not speak in the language of logic. It speaks in the language of symbol. In the dialect of the dream, when a certain muscle contracts without your conscious bidding, when the breath shortens, and you cannot say why, the psyche is trying to announce itself, and yet the ego resists. The ego insists it knows what is best. It says, "I am fine, this is nothing." But the unconscious will not be silenced forever. It will find a doorway, and that doorway may be the spine, the heart, the stomach, the very breath in your lungs. You cannot think your way past this. You must feel your way through it. Every ailment is an image, a living metaphor. The headache that strikes when you are surrounded by demands you dare not refuse. This is the crown of thorns you place upon your own head. The self-sacrifice you have learned to glorify because the world praises the overburdened. The knot in your stomach before speaking your truth. This is the ancient fear of exile. The archetype of the outcast stirring within you, reminding you that the tribe once punished those who defied its order. You may believe yourself modern, rational, untouched by these ancient fears, but they live in you still, carried in the blood and bone, whispering through the nervous system. The great error of our age is to separate the soul from the flesh, to imagine that what we feel and what we suffer are two distinct realities. They are one reality, seen from two angles. If the soul is the composer, the body is the instrument. When the music becomes dissonant, you can replace the strings, polish the wood, tune the keys. But if the composer is still writing in grief, the sound will ache no matter how perfect the instrument appears. The unconscious writes its music through symbols, and the body plays them without protest. Think now of the hands, how they reach, how they grasp, how they let go. In the language of the psyche, the hands are the emissaries of the will. They manifest the desire to take hold of life or to release it. Pain in the hands often reveals a paradox, the yearning to hold on to something that is slipping away, or the desperate refusal to take what is freely offered. I have seen those who give without ceasing, whose hands are always extended toward others, grow numb when it is time to receive. The unconscious sees this imbalance and whispers through stiffness, through ache, through the subtle tremor that says, you have forgotten that receiving is also a form of giving. The same is true of the arms they embrace or they block. They draw near or they push away. When they grow heavy, when they ache, it is not always from the weight of what they carry physically, but from the unacknowledged strain of what they carry emotionally. Have you noticed how a child runs into the arms of a trusted parent without hesitation? That gesture is instinct, uncorrupted by suspicion. Somewhere along the path to adulthood, many lose that instinct. We learn to fold our arms, to keep them to ourselves, to guard our hearts against the disappointment of unmet longing. And in this guarded posture, the muscles remember the choice. They tighten not only around the bones, but around the possibility of connection itself. There is a more subtle territory. Still the chest, it is here, in this sacred chamber, that the soul's most intimate truths reside. The chest is the sanctuary of the breath, and breath is the bridge between spirit and matter. When you are afraid, when you grieve, the breath shortens, the chest contracts. Some of you have lived for years in a half-breath, never knowing the fullness of your own inhalation, never granting your heart the space it craves. Here lives the archetype of the wounded lover, the one who once loved without armor and was wounded so deeply that they vowed never again to open fully. Yet the heart's nature is to open. To live with a permanently closed heart is to live in exile from yourself. I will tell you something paradoxical. The heart does not close to protect itself from pain. It closes to protect itself from love. Because love demands the risk of loss. Pain you have already met. It is familiar. Love asks you to walk beyond the border of the known. The body reflects this refusal tightness in the chest, shallow breathing, palpitations. When intimacy draws near, you may call it anxiety, but I call it the soul at the threshold of expansion, trembling at the cost of transformation. The back, meanwhile, is the silent historian of your life. Every burden you agree to carry is written there in muscular script. The upper back speaks of the roles you have assumed for others, the unchosen responsibilities, the silent agreements to be the strong one, the dependable one, the uncomplaining one. The lower back tells another story. Here lie the fears you would rather not name, the instability you deny, the dread that the ground beneath you could vanish. These are the territories of the archetypal provider and the silent protector. They do not ask for thanks. They ask only that you never falter. But the body eventually resists such ceaseless demands, and it does so in the only language it knows: pain. Legs and feet, these are your agents of movement. You covenant with forward motion. When the legs ache without apparent cause, when the feet burn or throb, it is often because you have unconsciously chosen to remain where you are. This is the archetype of the wanderer, reversed, the one meant to journey who has become rooted in the wrong soil. Perhaps you fear the unknown road, or perhaps you have convinced yourself that the path you are on is the only one allowed. But the body, wiser than the conscious mind, knows that life demands movement. It will whisper this truth through restlessness, through heaviness, through the subtle rebellion of the limbs There is an image I have carried for many years, that of a tree whose roots have grown around a stone. The tree lives, but it grows distorted. Its energy divided between upward reach and the effort to accommodate what blocks its path. So it is with the human being who lives around unaddressed truths. You can survive. Yes, you can even flourish in certain ways, but the growth will be twisted until the stone is removed, and often the stone is not some external fate, but an internal vow: I will never leave. I will never risk. I will never let go. Such vows were often made in the heat of an old wound. Yet they bind you still. The unconscious invites you to break these vows not by logic, but by ritual, by symbol, by the felt experience of release. This is why the healer's act of burning the written burdens is so potent. It is a dialogue with the psyche in its own tongue. Fear consumes, transforms, liberates. In myth, it is the gift of the gods, the element that both destroys and illuminates. When you burn the record of your unchosen burdens, you do not erase the past. You release its grip on your spine, your breath, your heartbeat. To heal, then, is not merely to correct what is wrong, but to reconcile with what is hidden. The body's pain is not a flaw to be eliminated. It is an oracle to be consulted, and if you ignore the oracle, its prophecies will turn into fate. This is the law of the psyche. What you refuse to witness within yourself will appear before you in the world, again and again, until you bow your head and acknowledge it. So I ask you, here in the privacy of your own listening, what is your body trying to tell you? And are you willing to listen, not with the impatience of one seeking quick relief, but with the reverence of one receiving a sacred text? For the body is indeed a sacred text, written in bone and blood and sensation, and every line is worth reading. There is a quiet moment, often before sleep or in the early hours when the world has not yet placed its demands upon you, when the body speaks most clearly. It is in this half-light of consciousness that the truth of your being comes forward, unadorned, unmasked. You may feel it as a subtle pull in the chest, a throbbing behind the eyes, a heaviness in the limbs, a flutter in the stomach. These are not random sensations. They are messages arriving from the depths, bypassing the logic of the mind to reach the living terrain of the soul. If you resist them, they will not vanish. They will circle back, perhaps more insistently. The unconscious is infinitely patient and infinitely persistent. When you ignore the whispers, it will send you symbols in your dreams, perhaps a recurring image of being chased or carrying a weight you cannot set down. And if you dismiss those as well, it will come through the body, a pain that will not yield, a fatigue that no amount of rest repairs. This is not cruelty, this is the psyche's devotion to wholeness. It will call you back to yourself by any means necessary. I have seen people treat their symptoms as enemies to be conquered, as invaders to be driven out. But the paradox is that these so-called enemies are your own unlived truths, dressed in the form of discomfort. The headache is the thought you will not acknowledge. The tight shoulders are the responsibilities you have not dared to release. The shallow breath is the grief you have refused to feel. In this way, your suffering is a mirror. And the question is not, how do I get rid of this? But what in me longs to be seen? In the alchemical tradition, a language I have often borrowed to describe the processes of the soul, there is a stage called calcinatio, the burning away of what is false. Fire is the agent of transformation. In the psyche, this fire is often ignited by the friction between the life you live and the life you were meant to live. The body feels this friction. It heats with inflammation, it tightens, it aches, and yet the fire is not merely destructive, it is purifying. To resist it is to be consumed in the smoke. To allow it is to be remade. Imagine for a moment that your pain is not a flaw, but an archetypal guide. The stiff neck becomes the gatekeeper, asking you, what have you refused to turn toward? The aching back becomes the burden bearer, asking, whose load are you carrying? The tight chest becomes the silent lover, asking, what feeling have you hidden away? When you approach these sensations not as problems, but as characters in your inner myth, they begin to speak in richer detail. They will tell you the origins of their presence, a vow made in childhood, a grief left unfinished, a fear inherited from ancestors you never met. I remember a woman who came to me with chronic pain in her legs. She had no medical explanation that satisfied her. She could walk, yes, but always with a weight, as if her legs were reluctant to carry her forward. As we spoke, it emerged that she had lived for years in a relationship that stifled her, one in which every attempt to move toward her own dreams was met with subtle sabotage. Her legs, in their wisdom, had mirrored this inner truth. She could not move forward because she had bound herself to a place she no longer belonged. The healing did not come instantly. It came as she allowed herself to imagine a life beyond that relationship. Each step in that vision loosened the grip of the pain. Here lies another truth the body teaches. Healing is rarely instantaneous, because it is not merely about the removal of pain, it is about the reconfiguration of the soul's alignment. To heal the chest, you must open the heart to breath and to love. To heal the back, you must lay down the burdens that do not belong to you. To heal the legs, you must take a step, perhaps the most frightening step of your life, toward the unknown road that calls you. The body will not be deceived by half measures. It will wait for the real movement, and only then will it loosen its grip. The dream to participate in this process. A man who cannot speak his anger may dream of a voice that will not come out, or of being underwater, straining for breath. A woman who refuses to leave a stifling job may dream of being trapped in a narrow hallway, unable to find the door. These images are the psychic cousins of physical symptoms. The dream is the body of the night, the body is the dream of the day. They speak to each other constantly, both carrying the messages of the self, that central unifying force which seeks nothing less than your full individuation. Individuation is not comfort, it is the path of becoming whole, which often means facing what you have long avoided. This is why symptoms may worsen before they release, because as you begin to face the truth, the unconscious brings forth the deeper layers, like roots being pulled from the soil. The ache may intensify, the dreams may grow more vivid, the emotions more raw. This is not a sign of failure. It is the sign that you are approaching the heart of the matter. I tell you this so you will not flee at the first rise of discomfort. Stay, listen, ask not only what will make this go away, but what is this trying to give me? There is always a gift, though it may be wrapped in pain. Perhaps it is the return of your own voice, the rediscovery of a forgotten desire, the reclamation of the courage you thought was lost. The archetypes live for such moments when the wounded healer in you recognizes the wound not as an enemy, but as the very place where light can enter. And remember, the unconscious speaks in images, in sensations, in patterns that repeat until understood. If you feel the same pain at the same time in your life each year, ask what anniversary it keeps. If an ache flares up when you are near certain people, ask what unspoken truth their presence awakens in you. The body is exact. It wastes no movement. It speaks when words fail, and it remembers what you have tried to forget. So tonight, when you are alone, I invite you to perform a simple act. Sit in silence. Place your attention on the part of your body that has been calling you most loudly. Close your eyes. Ask it, what do you want me to know? Do not force an answer. Let the image, the memory, the feeling rise of its own accord. And when it does, do not turn away. This is the beginning of the dialogue that heals, not by erasing the pain, but by transforming it into meaning, because to live without meaning is the deepest wound of all. And your body, in its devotion, will not let you forget that there comes a point, if you listen long enough, when the body's messages no longer sound like complaints, but like ancient chants. The ache becomes less of a threat and more of a teacher, and you begin to sense that you have been walking alongside it your whole life without knowing its true name. In that moment, you understand something essential. The pain was never here to destroy you. It was here to bring you home. To arrive at this understanding, you must surrender the fantasy that healing is a return to what you were before the wound. There is no before, there is only transformation. You will not be who you were, and you will not be who you are now. You will become something else, something more integrated, more aware, more deeply rooted in your own truth. The body knows this. That is why it resists superficial fixes. It demands the alchemy of your full attention, your full honesty. Imagine for a moment that your body is a great temple, and each symptom is a bell rung in a distant chamber. Some bells are gentle, ringing only once in a while. Others are loud, persistent, impossible to ignore. Each bell is calling you to a different part of the temple, a different aspect of your inner world that has been left untended. The ringing will not stop simply because you grow impatient. You must walk into that chamber, kneel before what you find there, and listen. Sometimes what you find is grief raw, unprocessed, older than your conscious memory. It may belong to a younger version of you, or even to those who came before you. Other times, you will find anger, tightly wound like a coiled serpent, waiting for permission to strike. not at the world, but at the illusions that have held you captive. And sometimes you will find joy, strangely trapped, waiting to be expressed after years of being deemed inappropriate or dangerous. All of these, when ignored, become pain. And all of them, when acknowledged, become medicine. The archetype of the wounded healer teaches that our deepest wounds are not curses, but initiations. To be initiated is to be led through the threshold of suffering into the realm of wisdom. Your body, in this sense, is not merely flesh and bone, but a ceremonial ground. Each pain is a ritual, each sensation a step in the initiation. You are not the same person who began this path, and you will not be the same person who finishes it, if finish is even the right word. For healing is not a destination, it is a spiral, returning to the same places again and again, but each time with a deeper understanding, a broader view. Dreams will often mirror this spiral. A recurring dream that changes slightly over time is the psyche's way of showing you that you are not stuck. Even if you feel you are, the locked door may still be there, but now you hold a key. The dark forest may still loom, but now you walk with a torch. These changes are subtle, but they reflect real movement within you. And as the dream evolves, so too will the body. A pain that once felt unbearable may lessen, or shift, or transform into a sensation that is no longer frightening, but simply present a reminder of where you have been and what you have learned. One of the most difficult truths for the modern mind to accept is that pain does not always need to be eradicated to be healed. Sometimes it needs to be befriended. This does not mean resigning yourself to suffering. It means ceasing the war against yourself. In that truth, an unexpected thing happens. The body softens, the nervous system loosens its grip, the tight breath expands, and often without any conscious effort, the pain itself begins to dissolve, not because you forced it, but because you no longer resisted it. I once spoke with a man who had carried tension in his shoulders for decades. He had tried every form of therapy, every stretch, every remedy. Nothing lasted. When I asked him what he carried in life, he laughed bitterly and said, "Everything, everyone." It was not until he began the difficult work of letting others carry themselves, even if they stumbled, that his body began to release. This is the paradox of healing. Sometimes the release you seek in the body can only come from a release in the soul. The unconscious has no interest in your comfort, if that comfort is built on the denial of your deeper truth. It will strip away illusions, even if doing so causes temporary chaos, and it will use whatever means it must: a sudden illness, a flare of chronic pain, unexpected fatigue to get your attention. These are not punishments, they are awakenings. They are the soul saying, you cannot go on like this, you must change. So I ask you now, not as a patient, not as a follower, but as a fellow traveler on this strange road, where in your body is your truth hiding? Is it in the clenched jaw that speaks of words unspoken, the aching hips that tell of decisions postponed, the restless legs that long for a journey never taken? Will you dare to listen? Will you dare to follow where it leads? Close your eyes. If you wish, place your hand over that place in your body. Feel the warmth of your own touch. Say quietly, I'm listening. Do not demand an answer. Do not rush. Simply stay with it. This is the beginning of a new relationship with yourself, one built not on control, but on respect. And if you find in the days ahead that the pain still rises, that the old symptoms return, do not despair. Remember the spiral. Remember that you are moving, even if the path curves back on itself. Remember that each return brings you closer to the center, where the self waits, vast, patient, whole. You will not lose yourself in this process. You will find yourself, and when you do, the body will rejoice, not by becoming perfect or painless, but by becoming honest. It will no longer need to shout through symptoms, for you will have learned the language of its whispers, and in that quiet conversation between flesh and soul, you will discover the truest meaning of healing, not the absence of pain, but the presence of wholeness. So, go now. Walk with your body as your ally, your guide, your oracle. Listen to its metaphors. Honor its archetypes. Tend to its dreams. Let the neck teach you flexibility. The shoulders teach you release. The chest teach you love. The back teach you freedom. The legs teach you movement. The feet teach you belonging. And know that every step you take in this awareness is a step toward the life that has been calling you all along. Because in the end, there is no separation between the path of the soul and the path of the body. They are the same path, and you have been walking it every day of your life, whether you knew it or not. Now you walk it awake,